Hi, welcome to Candid Chats on Cancer. I'm Mary Robinson.
I'm Jamie Moore. So Mary, who are we chatting with today?
Well, I'm really excited to tell you we have a survivor with us named Brian Niedzwiecki, and we're happy to have you here. Tell us a little bit about your story.
Well, my story started about a year and a half ago or so. I was diagnosed with stage 2 testicular cancer on September 29th, 2018. Scratch that 2017.
Yeah.
And, everything just happened really, really fast. I had surgery pretty much almost immediately within 24 hours to remove the primary tumor. It actually was metastasized to the lymph node in the back of the abdomen, and then I underwent 9 weeks of chemotherapy to take care of that. And so far, it's continuing to shrink. It's in remission right now. I've been out of treatment for about a year.
Great.
So I have my big 1-year appointment here in a couple weeks. So I'm really hoping for some good news on that.
Are you kind of nervous about that, or are you feeling pretty good? Yeah. Seems like all of us get nervous when it comes to appointments.
Every last one of us, and both of us had just come up on our year appointments too, and so we know exactly how you feel.
Yeah.
And it's very normal to feel to feel anxious about going in and finding out how you're doing.
Yeah.
But if I can back you up a little bit, how did you find your cancer?
Well, basically, it was about 3 months of trying to figure out what was going on. I had a lot of pain, especially in my back. There was pain in my hips, especially. It didn't feel muscular in any way. It felt like a nerve compression in some way. And I just had a hard time walking. I had a hard time sleeping. Whenever I slept, I had that pain in the hips. After physical activity, I would have some pain in the back, and that nerve compression, seemed to increase just a little bit. And I saw my doctor several times trying to figure out what was actually going on. And he thought it was muscular in some way, so he was doing orthopedic type, diagnosis. And he ultimately told me, you need to pay attention to what's causing it.
Right.
And that's when I noticed, okay, it's happening when I sleep, happening when, just kind of when I walk. And in order to decompress, I had to sit up in a recliner for an extended period of time to let that pain go away. And I was actually in the UK. This was about 3 weeks before I was diagnosed. I had the worst stomach ache anyone could possibly ever imagine. I was in Dublin at the time, and I was in bed for 2 days.
Right.
Did you think appendix or anything, or did you just?
I kind of did think appendix.
Just bad, or just different food even.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like
I mean,
food
honestly,
poisoning. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been any one of those. So we were on a toured trip, so we ended up going to Scotland. Just like, I need to see a doctor. So I asked my tour guide, what kind of doctors are available, where can I go? I ended up seeing a doctor that night, and I was diagnosed with gastritis. So I'm like, okay, I was prescribed some antacids to take care of that. That's a pretty standard treatment. But I immediately make an appointment with my doctor back here in the States to, follow up, see if yes, this is the case, or no, it's not. And he ordered an ultrasound because, gastritis is a very common traveler's condition.
Yeah.
Or it could be caused by something else, like maybe gallstones or something along that line. So we did an abdominal ultrasound, and I was diagnosed initially with an abdominal aortic aneurysm, which that was the initial diagnosis.
Okay.
So basically, blood vessel in the abdomen, the aorta just has a slight bulge in it. It's not urgent, but it's something he wants to keep an eye on. And then things really started to hit the fan a little bit. The stomach pain really didn't go away. I was just continually sick. And I was losing weight very, very fast because I didn't have an appetite. And I kind of noticed, I'm a fencer, and I went.
That sounds fun.
It is.
Fencing.
It was a lot of fun. And I apologize if things get a little bit too graphic here. Basically, I noticed the diseased testicle was kind of moving around a little bit more, and
Right.
something wasn't right. And that night, I felt pretty good. The next day, my back just explodes in pain. And I kind of do a self-exam on the testicle. I feel a hard spot. I notice its size is noticeably bigger.
Right.
And I immediately call my doctor and show him. And he immediately freaks out the instant he sees it. And that's kind of when I knew, you know, it could be the worst.
Something was
Right.
wrong.
Yeah, something was very wrong. So he ordered a testicular ultrasound, CT scan, and during the ultrasound, I was able to see on a monitor, you know, what the technician was seeing, and I did not like what I saw. Like,
Right.
we saw the one that wasn't of concern, you know, it was very clear. It was pretty much a white sphere, or, you know, a white round object. And then we took a little one of concern, and it's just dark. And it looked like there was some kind of bubble inside of it. And I pretty much knew right then and there what it was. But, you know, obviously the tech couldn't tell me, and they had to wait for all the data to come in for that. But that was kind of my first indication that this could be cancer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did they do any other type of biopsy or anything that day, or did you get sent home and have to wait?
I had the I met with my primary care doctor on a Tuesday. The ultrasound was on a Wednesday, CT scan was on Thursday. So I had to wait for after the CT scan to get the final word. And right after the CT scan, I pulled into my apartment complex, and I was expecting to just watch a football game with my roommate.
Right.
And, you know, Thursday Night Football is something I always watch all the time.
Yes.
Plus it was Bears versus Packers. I'm a Bears fan.
There you go.
Go! Didn't they just win?
They did just win. So I was really happy about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was supposed to watch a game with him, and right when I pull up to the parking space to my apartment, I get a phone call from my doctor's nurse. He's like, "Hey, the doctor would like to speak with you." And he admitted me to the hospital immediately, not so much for the tumor, like, you know, he didn't explicitly say it was cancer. It was more so
Right.
for my kidney, because what the tumor did is ultimately it grew around the ureter
Right.
that drained the kidney to the bladder, and it blocked my kidney off.
Caused your kidney to
Yeah, so I had
Swell.
hydronephrosis. So
Do you think that's why you had the back pain?
I firmly
Yeah.
believe that's why I had the back pain. And so we had to immediately take care of that, and urologist came in, and that's kind of when he broke the news to me that it was cancer.
yeah.
And that was just an absolutely devastating moment for me.
Yeah, and you're so young. I don't know how old you are, but you look very young,
Yeah.
and you probably had your whole life ahead of you.
Yeah, I
And
just
then-
turned 30.
Wow.
And I was diagnosed at 29. So, I mean, cancer in that young of an age it really doesn't belong.
Right.
Like, it's not even something anybody thinks about at, you know, in their late 20s, early 30s. You know, when it just dawns on you like that, you know, I mean, you know, it just hits hard, and
Yeah.
you have to somehow navigate essentially saving your own life. You know, I remember asking the urologist, what's the prognosis of this, which is more or less a euphemism for, am I going to die?
Well,
Yeah.
yes.
And when you have to ask somebody
Or
that,
how quick am I going to die?
yeah,
Yeah.
and when you have to ask somebody that, you know, everything changes right then and there,
Yes.
because I face my own mortality. He did tell me that it was very curable, you know, it is treatable, but we need to go, and we need to go right now.
So you had talked about the tumor has shrank.
Mm-hmm.
Did they not take it out?
No, they didn't. There were, stage 1 is when the tumor is localized to the testicle.
to that
Stage
area.
2, it metastasizes to the lymph nodes. And that lymph node was kind of like a secondary tumor, more or less. So the first surgery is to remove the testicle.
Okay.
But, you know, the way that the tumor was arranged, especially wrapped around the ureter and all that, they couldn't do surgery to remove that. So we had to do chemotherapy to get it down.
Yeah.
At the bare minimum, get it down. And everyone that has testicular cancer knows about a major surgery. It's called an RPLND. Forget what the first 2 letters are, but the last 3 are lymph node dissection,
Okay.
where they basically cut you open from sternum to pelvis, more or less. They essentially stick your guts on you,
Yeah.
and they pluck out the lymph nodes that are cancerous. I was lucky to avoid that surgery because the chemotherapy actually did very, very well with that lymph node tumor. At the same time, it's still not off the table. And there's kind of a complication right now that if they were to do a major surgery, right now it's wrapped 50% around the aorta that feeds that left kidney.
Right.
So if he goes in to do surgery, he'll more than likely have to remove that kidney
Take
as
the
well.
kidney with it.
Even though you have a healthy kidney?
Even though I have, well, it's now healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kidneys have a remarkable way of healing. I have stage 4 colorectal cancer.
Oh.
And one of their big concerns is that my tumor was resting on top of my ureter. So I had the same thing. My kidney backed up, and so I'm sitting there thinking, oh, all I got is, colon cancer, cut it out, or chemo. But now 4 or 5 renal doctors are all coming in going, oh, by the way, your kidney's not looking any good either. But once they relieved the pressure off of it and it was allowed to heal, I haven't had any problems since. And I went through a lot of chemo too. It really kind of beats up your kidney. So
Yeah. And the thing about my kidney especially, during the orchiectomy, they put a stent in there to drain it. That stent eventually failed. So I was in the hospital about a week and a half, 2 weeks later, and ultimately they decided to put a nephrostomy tube in my back to drain the kidney more directly into a bag that was on my leg. And I had that thing in there for about 3 months.
Oh, wow.
wow.
So that was all throughout chemotherapy because they still had to drain the kidney while that tumor was still there. And ultimately, the bag wasn't big enough for, just day-to-day usage. So every 2 to 3 hours, I had to go drain the bag, and that included at night. So I didn't get
no.
I didn't get a good night's sleep for about a good 3 months.
Yeah. So that's called a urostomy?
Nephrostomy tube.
Nephrostomy, okay.
Yeah.
That-
I had to really learn how to say all these words.
I've never even heard of that word.
Yeah, you start learning your anatomy really quick when you get cancer,
I guess, yeah.
Yeah, I learned more than what I ever care to know about cancer.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm sure.
Or
We
anything
all-
about your body
we all
even,
have.
yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
So you were an athlete too, right? If I'm not mistaken?
Well, more or less. Yeah, basically, cancer can happen to just about anybody, anywhere, at any time, and I found this out better than anybody. 11 months before I was diagnosed, I completed a half Ironman triathlon.
And what is that for the viewers that don't know?
That is something short of amazing is what it is.
That's what I thought, yeah.
It's a 1.2 mile open water swim. I did this down in Miami, so it was more like a bay area. Then a 56-mile bike ride, and then run 13.1 miles, which is a half marathon, all back to back.
Yeah,
I
consecutively.
can't even begin to think about doing that, Jamie.
I can't even think about doing the 1.2
I could do a couple
mile
laps in the
swim.
pool,
Yeah.
And yeah,
and then I'm out of breath.
and I can do about 3 miles walking, and we're done.
I could do that, yeah.
So you were in the greatest of possible health that any human being could possibly be in at your age group.
Yeah.
But yet you still,
Yeah, I
Like
mean,
cancer.
it just happened. I mean,
yeah.
Was there history in your family?
there is a history of cancer in my family, but it's more so due to lifestyle choices. Like I had several relatives pass due to
Right.
lung cancer because they smoked.
Yeah.
That was the biggest thing. There were other things. There was an instance of skin cancer, which is more so due to not wearing sunscreen when
Environment,
this person was
exposure.
younger. So, I mean, there is a history, but this is the first case of testicular cancer or anything, as far as I know, that was completely out of my control. Or
Right.
completely out of our control. There
Do
may
they
have been
have
one
any,
other case.
Like reasoning as to do they have any statistics on why people get that, or?
They really don't know a true cause, but they do know that there's only about 8,000 U.S. cases a year of testicular cancer.
Really?
So it is very rare, but at the same time, very, very curable. And
That's great
They-
news.
Yes.
Yeah,
it's
they-
wonderful news.
they have not found a direct cause of it. They do have several risk factors, and none of those risk factors are linked to lifestyle in any way. The biggest risk factor, which I don't know if I actually had or not, is an undescended testis at birth, and I have no idea if I actually had that or not. But
that's about as rare as you can be too. Also,
Yeah.
there's only one other person I can think of that was, he's a bike racer.
Oh, yeah.
That he also had testicular cancer.
Armstrong.
Yeah.
oh yeah,
Lance Armstrong. And I was wondering, if there's any kind of correlation between you being on the bike a lot
I've heard something like that
and
too.
him being on the bike a lot. Is there any?
I think it's more coincidence than anything.
Probably.
It almost seems hard to diagnose to me, just hearing your story, because you had the back pain, and then they thought it was something else, and I just wonder if it's just a hard thing to diagnose.
Well, especially if you're an elite athlete, you got aches and pains in your back.
Well, I mean,
All the
especially at my age, cancer is not the first thing you jump to.
No.
I mean, especially testicular cancer, it's so rare. You're typically going to go for gastritis or, something, a very easy diagnosis. And it's like, okay, if it's not that, then what is it? And you kind of start to go up the ladder.
Right.
And then it wasn't until I did that self-exam where we started to get the idea it could be.
So had you not done that, who knows where you would have been?
Yeah.
They would have been maybe checking your stomach still or whatnot.
How many men even know to do a self-exam? We're not taught or ever told even. Women are taught immediately.
Check
do
your
breast
breasts every
exam.
month.
Men, we're never taught. There's no commercial on television that says, okay, men, this is how you should test your testicles.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah,
kind of at a little bit of a disadvantage in a way. And also, since it being so rare, it's not exactly like they have an NFL football game that,
Yeah, I mean, they have kind of brought up stories from the NFL actually of one player in particular that just had stage 1, or had stage 1, and got that taken care of. And he started to be an advocate because he understood that people have much more intense treatments than what he had. He just had the surgery, 2-week recovery. He was back on the football field in like 3 weeks.
Wow.
No chemo.
No chemo.
Wow.
Because it was all localized.
Yeah. Now, how many rounds of chemo did you end up having?
I had 3 rounds. Each were 3 weeks long. The big weeks were the first week of that block. I was in the clinic Monday through Friday for about 5 to 6 hours every day, just receiving all my drugs. I had to receive pre-fluids, then cisplatin, etoposide. I think that order may have been switched. And then I had to get post-fluids to help, get everything through and then kind of drain everything out. And that was all Monday through Friday. And on Wednesdays, I got a shot of bleomycin, which is just stick the port in, 15-minute shot, and then back out. And that was every Wednesday. So.
Now, what was that for?
I'm sorry?
What was that for? That I'm not familiar with that medication.
Bleomycin is more so a direct attack on lymph nodes, as far as I know.
Okay, cool.
So it was just another form of chemo?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds terrible. How did you struggle with image changes after surgery or anything like that?
I did. Especially, with testicular cancer, the first thing they do is remove that testicle. I was offered a prosthetic. I chose to decline it just because the urologist told me, a lot of guys hate them just because they
I didn't
either
even
don't
know it
feel
was
weird.
offered. Did you?
Yeah,
Oh,
but I think I probably would have made the same choice.
yeah. A lot of guys don't like it.
Some do, some don't. He's like, worst case scenario, we could just go right in and take it out, no big deal. I'm like, well, I really don't want to deal with that.
Right.
So I just opted not to. And plus, a lot of people that hear that I have testicular cancer, I start telling my story, they know that it's removed, and then, I started to, be called certain names or something like that.
Right.
I mean, a lot of them meant it in good humor.
Right.
But it just kind of rubbed me the wrong way just a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, as it should, really.
Yeah, it's like I was more identified by the fact that I was missing an organ as opposed to the fact that I was fighting for my life.
Right.
That isn't to say that having a sense of humor in a bad situation is a bad thing. You know, you should have a sense of humor, but some of those jokes just kind of rubbed me the wrong way just a little bit, and you know, it was more annoying than anything.
Yeah.
Also with image, I didn't have too many issues with hair loss.
Well, it just looks like you shave your head, that's all.
Yeah, but it was actually kind of nice because I didn't have to shave for about 9 weeks, so that was really, really nice. You know, silver lining to everything.
I have to put a plug in that because I didn't have to shave my legs for a long time either, and it was like, it's kind of nice.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
So what,
yeah.
the loss of a testicle, have you, or do you have to have your free testosterone checked every so often too, or do they have to supplement? I mean, you look like a stud. So do they have to supplement any testosterone, or does your
Not
other
yet.
testicle just pick it right
That-
on up? And
Supposedly the other one boosts production to kind of match and fill in the gap. I haven't necessarily had an issue with it. It's not a priority right now because we haven't even hit the 1 year post-treatment mark yet. Maybe it's an option down the road, but for right now, you know, it's just not a priority.
okay,
So how about, what did you do to keep a positive attitude during your treatments?
Ultimately, I just had to have a belief that everything was going to work. You know, I always, like, the doctors told me that, you know, we're going to be treating to try and cure you. It is a relatively high cure rate, but knowing it in the back of my mind versus believing it was completely disconnected. Like, I knew in the back of my mind, you know,
Yeah.
everything was going to be fine, but I had to truly believe that everything was going to be fine, and that's a huge difference.
Oh yeah, the mind can do powerful things.
Yeah, it really can. And ultimately, I just kept telling myself every night, everything's going to be great. You know, just keep living your life, do what you do, get out and do some activity once in a while. You know, I had a hard time reading books during chemotherapy, so I started listening to audiobooks.
I had a hard time with that too because my eyes hurt. What was your reasoning?
I was just exhausted, and I really couldn't focus on anything.
Well, and I was tired too, but I mean, my eyes burned so bad.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I was just wondering if there was a certain reason, but
Yeah, I was just really tired.
audiobooks are great.
Yeah, I still listen to them to this day. I've gotten through more books in the past 6 months than I have pretty much the past 2 years. So,
Yeah.
I know it's like people are always handing me books, just because you know, 'cause they think, well, you don't have anything else to do. Here's a book to read.
But
But it'd
you're
be
so
like a book on
tired.
cellular physics. It's like, oh yeah, it's like you're reading it.
that's a bit much.
and it'd be-
I know, I couldn't even think half the time. I just needed to rest my brain.
yeah.
Yeah. So what have you done to rebuild your strength and stamina? Because it sounds like you were like Iron Man, you know?
It's been really hard to get a lot of that strength back because the chemotherapy really did a number on me. And part of it was I did do some activity, but I don't think it was enough because keep in mind I still had the stent nephrostomy tube in there. So, you know, getting up and walking around was very difficult to do because it felt like, you know, both of those foreign objects in my body were like poking me constantly.
Oh.
So it was really hard to walk and just get out of my chair. But lately I've been doing some strength training. I've been trying to get out and run. But, you know, I'm not able to do anywhere near what I used to do. Like if I run 2 miles, that's a really good day.
Yeah.
And that's compared to, you know, running 13.1 miles after doing a whole bunch of other stuff.
Right.
I can't
it's
imagine.
You know, it's a huge swing in perception. But I also kind of have to believe that I will get back to where I was. There is a side effect with bleomycin that it can scar the lungs permanently, which affects oxygen diffusion. So he pretty much told me, you know, your endurance days, at least those long distances, very well could be over, just because I just can't get the oxygen into the body.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, 30 minutes a day working out, it's not going to be an issue. It's not an issue with day-to-day life. It's those really long endurance events or really high-intensity aerobics that it can potentially be a problem.
Okay, that's just really just gonna tear at your mind.
Yeah, it really does because,
Especially at his age.
Yes.
yeah, I mean, I keep comparing myself now to how I was back then, and I'm just a completely different person now, just physically, mentally, emotionally, and it's taken me a long time to adjust to that.
Yeah.
You know, we always kind of talk about the new normal, and even still to this day, a year out of the treatment, I really don't have a firm idea of what that new normal is.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, I want to do a lot of the same stuff that I used to do because my life had direction, I was happy, and then all of a sudden, you can't do that anymore. Like, even with my fencing career, I was never a great competitive fencer, but at the same time, I was at a certain point, and I'm now nowhere near where that was. So I'm essentially trying to relearn how to fence.
But it seemed like that was what really saved your life, was that fencing.
Yeah, I mean, that's ultimately what had the light bulb go off. And that is something that I still want to do.
Yeah.
You know, what I found out, I got neuropathy really bad, and I lost the gift of music. I play about any instrument you hand me,
Oh, really?
but I couldn't anymore. But the interesting thing is my neuropathy went away. All those bad habits that I had learned over 20-some years of playing guitar are now, I'm making new habits that are better than my old habits. And so hope for your fencing is all those habits that you had that you wanted to break beforehand, now that you have an opportunity to do that.
Yeah, I've actually thought about that too. You
Yeah.
know, just kind of working with my coach and just say, all right, let's just start from square one and just kind of rebuild it, because, you know, he's been telling me stuff, you know, for years, like, you know, make sure your hand moves first, make sure you get really deep in your lunge. It's like, okay, now we can actually have a chance to do it.
Yeah. Brian, thank you ever so much for coming on our show. It was really enlightening to hear about testicular cancer.
Yes, it was.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was really
Sure,
great to
it'll
be
help
here.
so many people.
It will.
Yeah. And join us again for another Candid Chats on Cancer.
Have a beautiful week. Be well.